gonna get me through today. Hello, Internet. This is Olin from What I'm Listening To. So, the last time I filmed with these items that I'm about to show you, I had filmed during a thunderstorm, and initially I was going to edit a vlog using that footage, but when I reviewed it, I realized, oh wow, this footage is really dark, and I hate it. So, I'm redoing it completely with my normal background. Maybe I'll show a clip from the old footage here. Turn this shit off. Ooh, that was a good one. Oh, you can't really see me, but we're gonna roll with it. Good evening, Internet. This is Olin from What I'm Listening To. As you can see, my backdrop is a little different. Right now, ooh, you can hear that. There's a bit of a lightning storm going on in San Francisco, which is the first time I'm experiencing this, so this is kind of interesting. In the meantime, we're doing a redo vlog, and I have some great items to show you that were once from a former vlog, so let's get started. The first item I have here, this is a True Widow record. I've owned this album digitally for quite some time, and I've loved it. It's amazing. It's this weird little mixture of stoner rock, doom metal, and shoegaze. It's unlike anything I'd ever heard. So I'd been listening to it on and off for years and years, and one day, recently, I stumbled across the album in the dollar section. Considering how much I enjoyed the album digitally, I decided, for $1, I'm gonna buy it. I'll own it on CD. The album's opening song, Creeper, is probably my favorite song on here. It just has this echoey, desolate sounding riff that sends chills down your spine. Really cool band, really good album, even cooler album cover there. Definitely check them out if you haven't, they're amazing. Next up, I have a Jessica Bieliff record. This is a self-titled album. I've talked about her in the past. I believe it was the first experimental vlog I did where I got an album of hers. The reason why I know about her is because she collaborated with Dave Pierce from Flying Saucer Attack under the name Clear Horizon, and I got one of her other records mostly because I wanted to hear what her solo stuff sounded like. It was a lot more folky than I was anticipating. Still very, very good, but not nearly as experimental as I was expecting to hear. But I was going through a bit of a dark folk phase, and I wanted to hear more of her material, and stumbled across this album, and like a lot of albums do, the cover grabbed me. From what I've heard off of this one, there are actually a couple of more experimental sounding songs on here, which I really enjoy, but it's still overall very folky, little ambient here and there. And considering that it's on the Cranky label, I just decided, hey, I'm gonna get this one. May as well check it out. Next album I have here, this is a band called Belong. This is their album Common Era. Yet another Cranky release. You really can't go wrong with whatever they put out. This band is so good. Found this in a very odd place at Amoeba in the Dark Arts clearance section, which the Dark Arts section is mostly for dark folk, neo-folk, gothic stuff. This band is not necessarily gothic or dark. They're more shoegaze ambient. They probably belong more in the experimental section, if anything. But their songs are fantastic. This whole album from start to finish is incredible. Come See is probably my favorite song, but I mean, A Walk, Perfect Life, the self-titled song Common Era, it's fantastic, it's great. Their other album, I believe it's called October Language, is just as phenomenal. They only have 2 albums, I believe, but they're both fantastic. I'm on the hunt for it just so I can have it, but until then, I'll be enjoying this one quite a bit. The next album I have here, this is a band called Experimental Aircraft. There are some bands that I stumble across specifically for their band names. Flying Saucer Attack was one of them, as I've talked about lots and lots of times. And then this was the other one. With a band name that has the word experimental in it, I just couldn't help but to wonder what they would sound like. Initially, I thought they were gonna be a pretty experimental ambient band, but instead what I discovered is they're an interesting balance of some shoegaze, some space rock, but mostly they sound very heartland rockish. There's a couple songs on here that remind me of the band The Gaslight Anthem, which is kind of odd considering that they're far from being shoegaze and spacey, but when you have those other two elements mixed in, you have a very interesting genre. So after perusing through their Bandcamp a bit, I ended up buying their CD. It was only $5, and I really wanted to support them and just see what the hubbub was about. Really cool record. I totally recommend checking them out. They have some very interesting things. Also, the label Graveface that released them is pretty cool. They have some great stuff, so highly recommend checking this one out. Staying on the shoegaze theme, this is a band called Film School, and this is their album Hideout. Found out about this band in an odd way. Amoeba was playing some kind of shoegaze sounding music in their store, and all I could remember was a couple keywords of the band. I actually don't remember what it was, and I tried to find the album in their store, and unfortunately couldn't find it anywhere. And eventually I just kind of gave up on it and completely had forgotten what the band was or what the album was. So another trip a couple weeks later, I stumbled across this in the clearance section, and I thought, oh, this is totally it. I kind of remember that this was the album they were playing. I later discovered that no, this wasn't the album, yet it's still pretty damn good. So whatever album they were playing in the store that day is completely gone. I have no idea what it was, but I left with this one, and I'm actually pleasantly surprised by it. I like shoegaze music where it's more noisier than dreamy. I mean, you have to have a nice balance between the two of noise and dream, but this one seems more noise-oriented than dreamy, and that's what I really dug about it. I loved all the effects that they were using and all the noise that they were making. Awesome band. I'm probably gonna have to look out for more of their stuff whenever I go shopping at Amoeba. This is a great album. Totally recommend checking it out. Okay, more shoegaze. This is a band called The Radio Department. Got this one because I've seen it on a list of best shoegaze albums that exist, and the cover just seems pretty interesting. But I also got it because it was recommended by my friend Luciano, who works there. He's recommended quite a bit of stuff. I've talked about him a lot in vlogs. He just has a great taste in music, experimental, dream stuff. So I trust his word with anything. I was actually very pleasantly surprised with how this one sounded. It's very laid back, synthy, very noisy, but very beautiful sounding shoegaze music. There isn't much live drums on this. It's just synthy drums that keep the beat, but then it's just covered in layers and layers of feedback and noise. This is a beautiful record, also worth checking out. I have to thank Luciano immensely for introducing this one to me because it's awesome. And the last records I have come in a trio, also Luciano picks. These are 3 albums by a dude named Ilyas Ahmed. So we'll start one by one here. This is an album called Between Two Skies, and I'd always seen this record in the experimental section. It had Luciano's sticker on it, and the face would always just be staring at me every time I saw it. But I never bought it because it was $20, and I thought, Jesus, that's kind of an expensive album. But over time I just kept seeing the album and just couldn't help but to wonder what the hell it was, what it sounded like, who it was. There's not much information given on the back at all. So finally I just grabbed the album and I went up to Luciano and I asked him, who is this and what does this sound like? He described it as dark, folk, kind of creepy, kind of all over the place. And this was back, gosh, way before Halloween, maybe sometime late September. So I was sort of getting in the mood for spooky music, especially spooky folk music. So instead of getting this one, I ended up getting this one first. This is his album, The Vertigo of Dawn, mostly because it was the cheapest one that they had. So I checked it out, it had a sticker on it, and I was very, very impressed by it. Ilyas uses an assorted amount of instruments. There's an oboe in one track, there's multiple guitars, there's almost medieval sounding strings that he uses, echoey yet distorted vocals, very unique stuff. Eventually I went on to get this one. This is his album, Goner. Just more of the same stuff. This one I feel is a bit more noisier. It sounds like the microphones he was using weren't the greatest of quality, but there's something about that that makes it sound very cool. Plus, Grouper is on one of these songs, and I later learned that him and Grouper are pals and they collaborate all the time, and they're just very good friends. So finally, after getting those two albums, I succumbed to this one. I got it on Discogs because it was significantly cheaper, but I bought it nonetheless, and it's an earlier release. This actually started out as a self-release CDR. This particular one is a reissue, which has another EP on it, 3 additional songs. And you can tell that it's an earlier release because it's not nearly as complex as these two guys, but it's still him nonetheless, still spooky, dark-sounding folk songs, and it's awesome. All 3 of these guys are fantastic. I love his work. I am now a fan of this man, and anything I can find of his, I'm probably going to end up getting. So thank you, Luciano, for introducing this guy to me. Okay, internets, that does it for me. I need to actually immediately edit this vlog just so I can get something out on time. If you have any albums or bands that you want me to check out, leave a comment down below. If I like it, maybe I'll include it in a vlog. But until then, this is Olin from What I'm Listening To, signing out. Goodbye.